This is the place, all right. Kiss me. Once we cross, it could all be different.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Peaks TV. I'm David Chen.
I'm Joanna Robinson.
Welcome to the podcast. What we do here on Peaks TV is we recap every couple episodes of the Showtime original series, Twin Peaks: The Return. This week, we've reached the end, Joanna Robinson. This is the final 2 episodes of Twin Peaks: The Return, Season 3, Episodes 17 and 18. And there is so much to discuss here, and I can't wait to get into it with you. Of course, you can find more episodes of this podcast at peakstv.com. You can also email us at peakstv@gmail.com. So before we begin today, I want to just say sorry that this episode's coming out a few days later than we would have liked. But, more time for the finale to marinate, for us to think about it, because it is definitely something that was very thought-provoking. But we do want to just give one final shout-out to all the people who backed this podcast on Kickstarter. We know this isn't like usually how we recap shows. We usually do every week, but we tried an experiment this time. And I would say the feedback has actually been very warm and positive. I've been really grateful for all the people that have tweeted at us and emailed us at peakstv@gmail.com saying they enjoy this podcast. So just wanted to give one more shout out again. Thank you so much to all the people who not only support this podcast, but all of our other podcasts and make it possible for us to do what we do. So thank you guys. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it obviously was extremely busy with Game of Thrones and Twin Peaks on at the same time.
What's that?
Yeah. What's the show? Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
It's a tiny little show, like niche, maybe 100,000 viewers on HBO.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. So doing both podcasts at the same time, definitely a challenge. But we did our best, and we are here to talk about the finale of Twin Peaks. So thanks for your patience. Thanks for backing us. And should also mention, right, this will be the last episode of Peaks TV, and it'll be the last episode of anything Joanna and I do for quite a while. So, Joanna, you want to tell people where they can find more of your work between now and whenever our next show is, which is probably going to be Decoding Westworld when Westworld premieres in 2018.
Until 2018, you can find me on VanityFair.com. My other Game of Thrones podcast, Spoilers, is doing an off-season tour, so we'll be talking about a number of things like Stephen King or Tremors, et cetera, all your great, fine pieces of pop culture. And then you can hear me talk about the award season on Little Gold Men, which is Vanity Fair's podcast, or you can find me on Twitter at Joe Wrote This.
All right. You can find all my stuff at davechen.net. I'm on Twitter at twitter.com/DaveChensky. That's Dave Chen, SKY. Find the other podcast I do, /filmcast, at /filmcast.com. All right, folks, let's dive into the final 2 episodes. Season 3, Episode 17. Reading the plot summary here from Wikipedia. Gordon tells Albert of a secret plan to find Judy, an extreme negative force, and is informed that Cooper is headed for Twin Peaks. So let's just pause right here. This opening scene where David Lynch's character, Gordon Cole, gives a massive download about Judy to Albert and what's her name?
Tammy Preston.
Preston.
She who cannot sit still.
That's right. She can't sit still. So what did you think of this scene and the explanation of Judy here?
I mean, I thought it was fine. Like, really, there's few people in the world I would listen to such, like, preposterous exposition from, but, like, David Lynch. I mean, I've literally watched this video of David Lynch cooking quinoa on YouTube. Look it up. It's there. It's like 20 minutes long. I've watched it. It's just so entertaining. So it worked for me, but, like, really, yeah, I was actually watching this episode with a group of friends. I usually don't get to watch TV with other people, but I was on vacation on Sunday, so I got to watch it with friends. And I was relieved to find out that I was not alone in my frustration with Agent Tammy Preston, and like her terrible reaction faces almost ruined this for me. Albert's great, of course. Miguel Ferrer's great, but Christabel continued to be just like a complete sour note for me in this series. But I did appreciate that they were day drinking red wine, and I liked David Lynch's just delivery of this crazy thing. What did you think?
Yeah, let me just read the text here. Gordon Cole says, "For 25 years, I've kept something from you, Albert. Before he disappeared, Major Briggs shared with me and Cooper his discovery of an entity, an extreme negative force called in olden times Jowday. Over time, it's become Judy. Major Briggs, Cooper, and I put together a plan that would lead us to Judy, and then something happened to Major Briggs, and then something happened to Cooper. Philip Jeffries, who doesn't really exist anymore, at least not in the normal sense, told me a long time ago he was onto this entity and he disappeared. Now, the last thing Cooper told me was, if I disappear like the others, do everything you can to find me. I'm trying to kill two birds with one stone." Anyway, I'll leave it there, but he goes on for a little bit, but that's kind of the baseline of what he's talking about. I was listening to Damon Lindelof dissect this on the Entertainment Weekly Twin Peaks podcast, and he was saying that line, Philip Jeffries, who doesn't really exist anymore, at least not in the normal sense, was the best line of the entire 2 episodes.
He's a teapot now. It's fine.
Yeah, I did think it was interesting how he kind of casually acknowledges that the supernatural aspects of Twin Peaks in a way that is just very blunt. I guess I don't recall it being so blunt in the past very often, but for him to just say, yeah, he doesn't exist in the sense that you understand. And it, like many things in these final 2 episodes, feels like a meta commentary on Twin Peaks: The Return as a whole. Philip Jeffries was obviously played by David Bowie, who also perhaps doesn't exist in the sense that you understand, not in the normal sense anymore. So it is just an interesting segment of screenwriting, like giving this download of what's going on, and just like Gordon Cole explaining everything. It's odd, but it also kind of lays the track for this character of Judy that you think is going to be the big bad, I guess, right? Like it's kind of setting Judy up to be the big bad, and kind of making it so that maybe we're anticipating this Judy is going to pay off sometime in the next episode and a half.
Yeah, and it's an interesting pivot away from, like, we've considered Bob this elemental evil, and even though we saw earlier this season that sort of pale monster figure who we guess we can decide is Judy, like, kind of give birth to Bob, so we knew that, like, there was something bigger and more evil than Bob. It still feels like a widening of scope of the first series, right? Like, there's an elemental evil thing named Bob. There's this, like, 1 or 2 dimensions that we operate in, and then this finale really, like, cracked that whole thing even wider than that. And yeah, I guess setup. It's a good. I think it's a great beginning for this episode because this 2-parter is so fascinating because the first part really does sort of follow the footsteps of, like, what you would think was a conventional wrap up of a mystery show where, like, a lot of questions are solved and a lot of battles are won and all this sort of stuff. And then part 2 is just, like, fucks that all up in a spectacular way.
Right.
And so the fact that this episode starts with, like, David Lynch being like, or Gordon Cole being like, let me lay out for you what Judy is, which people have been wondering about since, the Jeffries character brought it up in Fire Walk with Me years ago. It's an elemental evil. It's a big bad. And, like, this is what's happening and this is what we're going to do. And here we go. Like, it was a great sort of fake out to a conventional, this is our villain and this is what we need to fight sort of thing.
Right. And yeah, like you said, establishing that Bob is like a mini boss and Judy might be the ultimate boss, right?
Right.
So that is kind of interesting. So anyway, let's move on to the next scene in this episode. The remaining coordinates lead Evil Cooper to Jack's Rabbit Palace. He is transported to the firemen, then to the sheriff's department, and mistaken for the real Cooper. While talking to Evil Cooper, Frank receives a call from the real Cooper. Evil Cooper draws a gun, but is shot by Lucy. Let's just pause right there. A lot of stuff going on there.
This is so good. Okay, because, like, I was so you listened to the Entertainment Weekly podcast. I listened to The Watch earlier today, where Chris Ryan and Andy Greenwald were talking about, like, one of the virtues of Twin Peaks this year was that even those of us who watch so much TV couldn't predict where Lynch was going to go with this. And this is true. Like most of the time that I watch TV and film, like it's really hard to surprise me. Not because I'm so smart. It's not that. It's just like I've consumed so many stories that there's only like so many twists, that people have in their book. And David Lynch is not interested in like twists. He's just interested in like, fuck your linear storytelling, So when Evil Cooper walked into the sheriff's station, I was like, I really cannot tell you if I know for certain what TV show I'm watching. Am I watching the kind of TV show where there's no way these characters could get hurt? Or am I watching the kind of TV show where there is a way that Evil Cooper could like murder everyone in the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department and like break my heart? And I honestly didn't know. And I could never have told you that like Lucy was going to be the one to come in and like shoot Evil Cooper like at all. And so I was on the edge of my seat, as if I'd never seen a TV show before in my life. And I was watching the scene. I was so tense and upset. And then like I was watching with like a dozen people. We all audibly cheered when Lucy shot. And like that, it felt like almost like a childlike level of enjoyment of this very simple, like Lucy, who's not even like my favorite character, but like this force of good shoots this force of evil, and we're all happy for a minute, and it was I don't know. It was kind of an extraordinary moment. How did you process
it was an extremely tense moment because the Sheriff Truman. So we got to the end. We didn't see any Michael Ontkeen this series. That was kind of a disappointment. The first of many things that I was expecting in the finale that never happened. But it was very tense when it's one of those like classic movie moments when someone's on the phone and it's like, hey, the person you're with is not who you think they are. That it's a very kind of conventional movie cliche. And that would be basically where the cliches ended. Like this scene and the ensuing 5-10 minutes would be where the cliches ended for this episode. So it was kind of one of the final conventional moments when it's very tense, and then Lucy comes in and it's awesome, and Evil Cooper's dead, and I really enjoyed this scene. I was thinking, looks like they're going to wrap everything up really neatly. Man, David Lynch, I must have misunderestimated him. Because it looks like everything's coming to a neat close.
That at that moment when Lucy shot Cooper and he went down, might have been that, or it might have been the fight with Bob. Like, I'm going to keep talking about how I was watching this show with other people because I literally never do this. I always have to be like,
you're celebrating this fact.
I always have to like be by myself writing. And so like we were discussing it. And I was like, this is only part one. And someone was like, this is only like 20 minutes into part one. So like that was a good pull up short moment of just sort of like, this feels like it should be the final moments of a more conventional narrative. Yeah. And it's not. And so go ahead.
I was listening to Damon Lindelof talk about on the Entertainment Weekly podcast, talk about how he got to the end of part 17 with, Cooper walking into the forest with Laura, and he thought that he had mixed up the order of the episodes and played part 18 first by accident.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Evil Cooper draws a gun, but he's shot by Lucy. Cooper, the FBI, and the Mitchums arrive. Woodsmen tear at Evil Cooper's body, releasing Bob's orb.
Yeah.
Bob's orb. Freddy knocks out Chad, who had escaped his cell, and smashes Bob's orb with several punches. Cooper puts the owl cave ring on the doppelganger's finger, sending him back to the Black Lodge. I'm just going to keep going because there's just so much stuff here. Go ahead. You want to pause? Go ahead.
I just wanted to sort of slightly counter what you said earlier, where you're like, when Lucy shoots Evil Cooper, that's the end of the conventional narrative. And I disagree. I think this scene with, better Iron Fist, Green Glove Kid, this is a superhero, right? He's sort of been positioned as a superhero, or a hero with a destiny because he was told to be there and all that sort of stuff. And watching him punch out Bob, you feel like this is wrong. it shouldn't be this superhero kid doing this. Like it should be Cooper somehow defeating Bob. But it did feel once again more like a conventional story. Here's our hero with superpowers, and he's going to fight the evil force of evil, and he's going to win against all odds. And that's not the story we wind up watching in the end, but that's the story that it gives us for a little while, you know?
Yeah, and sorry, I guess I meant to say like this scene in this in the police station is kind of where the convention
Gotcha.
I mean, I would argue that this green gloved dude smashing an evil orb into billions of pieces and fighting with it is a little unconventional, but I agree that the overall arc is conventional of good triumphing over evil.
I would agree with you were not for the fact that like every blockbuster nowadays is that story. Do you know? Like it just seemed very comic book Marvel superhero to me.
Yeah, but
maybe because I keep calling him Hulk Hand in my own head that's like what it was to me. But yeah, go ahead.
So I want to return to the whole Freddy plotline at some point.
Okay.
Because I want to return to the Freddy. Let's just put a pin in that and come back to that.
But the first thread we leave dangling is the drooling character who we thought was maybe Billy or whatever is just left in his cell downstairs, and we never see him.
Even though
again.
he like plays around with his open wound and stuff.
Oh,
like
so disgusting.
Yeah.
But the Nido figure comes upstairs, and also Bobby Breaks does show up for the final moments of this.
Right. And Nido transforms into Diane, confirming a theory that was out there that Nido is Diane, right? Or is like a trapped version of Diane, but then like becomes Diane.
Yeah.
I would say, it's... I'm just going to pause for like 10 seconds and just acknowledge that it's kind of weird. Like the Nido character design and execution I thought was very interesting, very creepy, right? All the chattering that she does and those weird noises that she makes, like very, very creepy and well done. I do think it's just like a little odd that it's an Asian woman that plays like the messed up version of Diane, who's a white woman. I don't ascribe any like negative intention to that other than like my guess is David Lynch saw this actress who plays Nido and was like, that's who like messed up Diane should be, like he had this vision and maybe like that's who he thought it should be and whatever, but I don't know, it's not like it rubbed me the wrong way. I was just kind of like, like I wonder if that is saying anything at all, let alone anything good or bad.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I do think it's funny. Like the group that I was watching with, one person there, is Asian, and like we were like, this is kind of fucked up that like this Asian actress is playing like this way, and then he was like, no, it's not. I was like, he's like, I'm not even sure she's Asian. She's got all this makeup on her face. I was like, that actress is Asian.
Yeah, she's definitely
an Asian actress. And then like, I think what's even more interesting, or not more interesting, but I think what's also interesting is some people were wondering if Laura Dern's style all season, the like fake Diane style, which is like faintly Asian-ish all season, was some sort of like nod to that. I don't know. It's all kind of.
It's just weird. It's just weird. Like
funky,
it's not. Yeah. It's so weird. The whole thing is so weird. It's not even like. I can say this was like malevolent or negligent in some way. It just is weird. That's all I can say about it. All right. Anyway, Cooper unlocks a door at the Great Northern, where with the key, right, that was sent to him by Dougie's prostitute,
Jade.
Jade, right? That was sent to Sheriff Truman by Jade, where Mike takes Cooper to Jeffries, who transports Cooper to the night Laura died. So then you see like the kind of ring like form an 8 symbol, right?
Yeah.
And then
and I thought it was like an infinity symbol.
An infinity symbol, right? Transports Cooper to the night Laura died. Cooper prevents Laura's murder. In the morning, her corpse vanishes. As he leads her through the woods, she disappears. Sarah screams and smashes Laura's photo. And that's basically part 17. Yep.
crazy. Okay, so a couple things. Like, okay, so in I was just like, I was delighted, and my jaw was on the floor. The black and white stuff we see is obviously like footage from Fire Walk with Me. I believe, I was watching it with people who know Twin Peaks even better than I do, and we all agreed that while some of it was stuff you had seen in Fire Walk with Me, some of it I believe is like cut from Fire Walk with Me. So like the part where Laura looks off into the middle distance and screams, that's in Fire Walk with Me. But there's some like added stuff that maybe we had never, I think. I mean, people in the chat can disagree with me.
Also,
but like,
I'm just like, how the heck did they do this? Because they have modern day Cooper/Kyle MacLachlan taking olden days Laura Palmer's hand walking through the woods. Now, Laura Palmer's face is like out of focus.
Yeah, that stuff was done. That's the actress in a wig with like makeup and CGI in her face.
Right.
But done very well.
The effect was completely convincing to me. Like, I did not think to myself, oh, it's just an actress in CG and a wig. Like, I thought, wow, Kyle MacLachlan is altering the events of Fire Walk with Me.
It didn't look bad to me at all, but like, how I have like strong opinions about wigs. I was like, because it was even before she was like in frame with him, as soon as like they switched to that perspective where she's like alone in the woods, I was like, okay, that's a wig. That's different than the actress's hair from Fire Walk with Me. Because of my strong wig opinions, but it's an amazing effect, and it's really, really effective. And it's and you want this to happen, right? You want him to save Laura Palmer, and it gave off these really strong. I don't know, the Greek myth Orpheus and Eurydice, right? Like that. Yep. Orpheus is leading his dead wife out of the underworld, and he's not supposed to look back, and she's behind him, and then he looks back, and then she's gone. And then, like, that's what it felt like to me, is like, he saved her. Holy shit. We're watching, there's Joan Chen. We're watching scenes from the pilot. There's Jack Vance. The body's down on the beach. What is happening? And then she's gone, and there's a scream. And it's just like, all of it was just mind-blowing to me. I was like, are they going to undo the entire event of Twin Peaks? And then I was like, yes, but also no, because it's not like Cooper wins here, because she disappears and she screams. And then you get the really disturbing stuff with Sarah Palmer. And so I don't know, like what was going through your mind when you were watching it?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you haven't seen, I don't recall seeing a show do something like this. Like, there's other shows, I'm thinking like maybe Futurama probably does stuff like this, like where they would play with time and going back and affecting earlier events. People have brought up Back to the Future 2 as another example that's similar to kind of what happens in this episode. I thought it was interesting, the gentleman in the pilot of Twin Peaks, he actually gets to go fishing in this version, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't think he did in the original pilot.
No, because there's a body on the beach.
Yeah, so it looked like there was like old, like unshot. My guess is it was shot but unused footage of him fishing from back then. Is what it looked like. Anyway, I just want to call attention to also the fact that when he's leading her through the forest, she's out of focus. So the way they do the effect is really artful, I thought.
Yeah.
It like they know they probably don't have the goods to have it be her in focus, but the way they did it just sold the illusion completely. I really liked it a lot. So,
and what was interesting about this moment was like, even though there's like so much weirdness going on, I still thought that I still got tricked into believing maybe we were watching a more conventional show. So, when you have the Sarah Palmer scene, like, the friends that I was watching with, like, we've been discussing it all season, and we've been like convinced that Sarah Palmer like is Judy, and like, the Judy force implanted itself in Sarah Palmer via the frog locust back in the day, and blah, blah, blah. And that was a young Sarah Palmer. And I'm like, okay, does that mean Leland and Sarah Palmer are both infected by evil, but Laura Palmer's this like gold glowing globe orb angel figure, like all this sort of stuff, which in the end I've decided to just throw out the window and not care about. But like I was like, when she was matching Laura's photo, I was like, oh, like she is Judy and she's not okay with this like saving of Laura, so she's gonna do something terrible, and that's what's happening. I'm not convinced it's happening. I'm not even gonna sit here and try to argue that's what's happening, but I'm just gonna say that at that point we were still trying to do the like,
right.
We can predict what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and I think I think that points to an overall truth, which is that all we're doing here on this podcast, as anyone who's writing about the show is doing, is making our best guess at what the fuck is happening on the show. Like,
but I don't think the point is to solve it. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but like, I got angry, as you might remember, at specifically, and since I'm going to walk this back, I feel okay about like sort of directly naming who I got angry about, but like I got angry at Matt Zeller's, not angry, but like I was frustrated with this position Matt Zeller Sites took at the beginning of the season, where he was like, if you're going to try to like Reddit detective and solve and put together the clues to solve the mystery of the Twin Peaks, you're doing it wrong. I still disagree with him. Like, I think you can enjoy the show on any level you want, and you can try to Reddit detective it and say like Sarah Palmer's face is on the jumping man, or like whatever it is you want to do. There are certain mysteries that like Reddit solved, like that Nida was Diane, or that Richard Horn was, probably the product of rape because of Evil Cooper, that Diane was raped, like all that sort of stuff was sort of put together by people close watching it in that way. And you can try to like create various narratives that you want, but I feel very strongly that Lynch is not presenting you with one answer, that no one here, including David Lynch or Kyle MacLachlan, is interested in telling you one thing. And that it's intentionally, as we'll get to in part 2, left open for you to think about and debate. Lynch and Frost, I should say. I always forget to credit Mark Frost, who of course I should. And then that's sort of my takeaway. So it's not, I still like fundamentally kind of disagree with Matt Zoller Seitz, like arguing that if you're watching a certain way, you're doing it wrong. I don't think there's a wrong way to do it, but I just think that there isn't one answer, intentionally so,
Yeah, sure. I think the point I was just trying to make is that we might state things as though they're facts on this podcast, but that's not true at all. We're all just trying to figure it out.
I wasn't disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay.
I just didn't want people to think, well, actually, you said this, but in fact, blah. We're doing is guessing. That being said, Andy Kaufman in the chat has a theory. He says, I don't think Nido equals Diane. Nido was a conduit for the real Diane to return. Her facial scars parallel the jumping man's mask plus monkey situation. Do you know what he's referring to with the jumping man's mask?
Yeah, the jumping man. I don't agree with that assessment,
Sure.
but if you want, you can decide that the makeup on Nido's face is like similar to the jumping man sort of, which is like a commedia dell'arte sort of mask kind of situation. I don't know. I think that when Diane, I don't agree with that assessment, but you can interpret it however you want, but only because the Tulpa version of Diane, which is who we were with for most of the season, was like, I'm in the sheriff's station. So she's not like the conduit that will allow me to return is in the sheriff's station.
Right.
She's like, I'm in the sheriff's station.
Right.
That's what I am.
Right. Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on. Episode 18. Cooper's doppelganger, Evil Cooper, burns in the Black Lodge. Mike creates another Dougie who returns to Janie E. and Sonny Jim. Let's pause right there. That's the last we basically see of Janie E. and Sonny Jim, right?
But as I requested last week,
Yep.
Mike made a better doppelganger of Dougie,
because he seems like he's actually knows what's going on in the world, right?
Yeah. A good Coop doppelganger. So Janie and Sonny Jim are like the only ones who get a happy ending. And this is like, what this really highlights for me is that, we'll talk more about like sort of Coop's inability to give up the fight, right? Which is, I think, a big part of part 2. But if he had wanted to, when he woke up, with in the hospital with the Naomi Watts character and all that sort of stuff, like he could have just stayed there and he would have had a happy ending if he had stayed there. Like, like a happy enough ending. It wouldn't have been a happy ending for Coop because Coop needs to like keep fighting and, correct the problems of the world and white knighting and all that sort of stuff like that, which actually might be kind of problematic, which we'll get to. But this doppelganger gets the happy ending that Coop gave up in order to keep fighting the good fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't even think about it like that, but yeah. And we think that the doppelganger that's with Ginny and Sonny Jim is like an improved version of Coop, right? Like he's not the he's clearly has the same body as New Cooper, right? He's not like the overweight version of Cooper that apparently vanished in the first episode of the series, and he seems to be responsive verbally to them and moving around. Like I think he ducks down to give him a hug. So he's not like brain dead Dougie, right?
Yeah, he's not brain dead Dougie, and I also think he's not. I think he's not going to be like stepping out on Janie E with Jade Dougie either.
Right.
I think he's going to be like, so John Shelton says he's made from good Coop. So I think, he's just like, if you ever watch Doctor Who, there's essentially like that's what it made me think of, is this like towards the end of the David Tennant run, there's like a doppelganger David Tennant Doctor Who that's sort of like all the good qualities without the trapping of like the hero complex that comes with like the real version, so anyway.
So that would probably be like the last moment of positivity we'd get this episode. Cooper appears in the Black Lodge again, encountering Mike and the Arm. He emerges and meets Diane in the woods. They drive on a highway for 430 miles and quote-unquote cross over, then drive to a motel and have sex. Cooper awake. Well, let's pause right there, right? Super creepy. They're driving, right?
Yeah.
Into the middle of nowhere. They arrive at this point. They talk about uncertainty of what happens when you cross over, right? What do you make of any of this? Like he says, once we cross, it could all be different. That's what he says, right?
Right. So, as you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, that this is like a reference to the very beginning of the season when the fireman character was like 430, Richard and Linda, like this is what we're about to see. So there's some sort of like invisible barrier that when they cross it, basically day becomes night. They basically become other people. And this is a theme that like David Lynch loves to visit in his work of like people becoming other people. So my sense is like, because when they go to the motel and they have sex, like we are not watching Coop and Diane have sex. Like not at all. Like that's my sense, is like they basically kiss each other goodbye before they cross the barrier. One fun thing that the Reddit detectives pointed out, is that I don't know what you would call something like that. The like big, it's not like a light pole or whatever. It's like a big structured, it's not a transformer, whatever. Like the big electric structure that sort of marks the 430 mile marker. Looks like the sort of symbol of the like triangular thing with the two triangles on the side of it. That might be coincidence, but I doubt it. But
are you talking about the ring, the symbol on the ring? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, but even more specifically, like its iteration when Evil Cooper had that playing card, and he's like, "I'm looking for this. This is what I'm looking for." Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I my take on it is that they become different. They become Richard and Linda. Or something. I mean, like, I don't care to like exactly pin it down, because like there's parts of them I think that are still there when they're having sex. There's that super creepy moment when Diane sees herself, right? Or Linda see herself or whatever. They go into one motel. Coop / Richard, whoever, wakes up in a different hotel.
Yeah, because when he comes out to his car, you see that it's a different hotel.
It's a different motel. He has a different car, and they're in Odessa. He's in Odessa, Texas. So something weird happened. My sense is that as soon as it became night, they were different people. But if you want to say they didn't become different people until they started sex or until they woke up or whatever you want to say, but like at a certain point, it's about I don't know, entering a new reality, entering a different time and place, right?
Right, and we should also say Cooper's whole demeanor and behavior is really different.
Yeah.
He's not the same Cooper, like he's not the same Cooper from original Twin Peaks that he was in like episode 16, but he's also not evil Cooper.
He
right?
seems
some
like
kind
he's
of
a
in between.
hybrid.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was my sense. And like it was funny because when they switch into nighttime and we were watching and we're like, oh my god, is he suddenly evil Coop? I was like trying to stare at his eyeballs to make sure they weren't all blacked out and it wasn't like evil Coop again or something like that. But I know I agree that he felt like some sort of in between figure.
Right.
Yeah.
And when he goes to he sees a diner called Judy. Well, let's get back to the. Well, before, I wanted to mention one other thing is earlier in the season, Diane describes heartbreakingly a moment when Evil Cooper rapes her, right?
Yeah.
And at first, watching the scene, you think to yourself, "Oh, this is a redemption for that scene, right?" It's like they're having consensual sex and consummating their attraction for each other or whatever. But the more the scene goes on, it feels like it's a reimagining of the rape scene. Like it felt like it did not feel like a sex scene between two people who love each other. It felt like this is somehow another form of rape where Diane felt like she's being violated in some way by this guy who wasn't really Cooper. What did you think of that?
I mean, maybe as evidenced by the fact that she like pieces out the next morning, but like, it didn't strike me as like rape or non-consensual in any way because she's on top and she's like kind of in control of what's happening. To me, as I was still trying to grapple with like, is this Coop and Diane? Is this some evil alternative? Like, what's happening? One of my interpretations was like, this is therapeutic, not as like a redemption, like. Because say you're Diane and you were raped by someone who looks like Dale Cooper, who is like the person that you love and care about. It will not be easy to have consensual sex with the real Cooper, even knowing that he is the real Cooper because he looks like the person who raped you, right?
And maybe that's why she's like covering his face.
That was my interpretation of why she was covering his face because it was like hard to look at him. But there's something else going on there too because like Cooper doesn't look like he's enjoying it either. You know what I mean? And so it like he looked kind of evil-ish in that moment. So I mean, it was disturbing and of course intentionally so, but also it's just another example I think of Lynch. Like we watched Blue Velvet directly after finishing Twin Peaks, and
you guys really know how to party on a Sunday night.
Listen, we do. There was like themed food. It was a great night. There were costumes, it's the whole thing. But the, this bringing back together of Laura Dern and Kyle MacLachlan, who are like the, early, proto lovers of the Lynch's whole like thing. To bring them back together, to have them be Cooper, like everyone was like, ooh, when Laura Dern was cast, everyone was like, oh my God, she's going to be Diane. And oh my God, they're going to be in love. And oh my God, it's going to be like Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern back together. And it is, but it isn't. Like we get to see them have sex if that's what you're into, but then it's really disturbing at the same time. And so I'm reluctant to nail it down to any one thing. But obviously the intention was to disturb and distress us, and mission accomplished, right? Like,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Some good conversation in the chat room going on. Thomas Pasco says the music that they make love to is, or whatever they're making to, is The Platter Is My Prayer, which also plays during the God of Light scene in season 3, episode 8. And it has very dark supernatural connotations. Yeah,
it was so funny because when we were in the room trying to figure out like whether this was consensual, whether this was good, and then the doo-wop started playing, I was like, oh, you don't play doo-wop during like something disturbing. And then I was like, oh wait,
no one who plays doo-wop could be evil.
I was like, oh wait, Lynch definitely does. In fact, he has specifically used this song before to be disturbing. So yeah. Yep.
Also, Brian Davids from Film Subs points out like interesting contrast with the Dougie sex scene from earlier this season. Also had a woman on top, but it was like just a really different vibe, that scene, right?
Before it was clear that like Coop and Diane would not live happily ever after, I was like, how awkward would family reunions be between Diane and her sister when it's like, oh, you got one, I got one too. They look exactly alike. How fun.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on. Cooper awakes the next morning alone and finds a note left to Richard from Linda. And you point out like your theory is like they've become different people, right? He says the letter reads, "When you read this, I'll be gone. Please don't try to find me. I don't recognize you anymore. Whatever it was we had together is over. Linda."
Yeah.
So anyway, arriving at Judy's.
But what's also true is that Coop or Rich or whoever like felt like the way he read it was like Richard.
Yeah, he's like Richard. Who?
Yeah, exactly.
Like he's confused. He's not like, oh, that's us. Yes, of course.
Richard, me, of course. I'm
Yes.
Linda, her. Yes, obviously.
As anyone would read a letter like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Cooper awakes the next morning. I'm sorry, he said that. Arriving at Judy's diner. So he's driving down the street in Odessa, Texas. He sees Judy, the Judy's diner, which is like a reference to the extreme negative force from the previous episode. And he saves a waitress from harassment and obtains the address of another waitress, Carrie Page, who resembles Laura Palmer. So,
okay, a couple things.
yeah,
First of all,
yep.
don't put guns in a hot oil fryer.
Yep.
Just because you saw Coop do it doesn't mean you should do it. And also, I will say this is the one thing that like because, and I'm not saying like it was a genius of me to call this out. Like anyone, I'm sure could have seen it coming. But like when it's like, who is this gonna be? I was like, it has to be Laura. Like it has to be at least someone who looks like Laura because like he was sent to find Laura. Like Leland is like find Laura. So whoever answers the door here, this Carrie Page person, it's not going to be Audrey. I felt like very strongly it was going to be Laura. And it was, and it wasn't. And I really love that scene in this woman, Carrie's home with like the dead dude who's just there and they don't talk about it. I loved it. It was so creepy and good. So, yeah.
Right. And it just gives you this sense that they're like, something is off with this world. Like something's profoundly off with this world. The diner scene too. It's weirdly quiet there, right? There's not that many people in the diner. It just feels like a very odd world that they're in right now. Kind of like almost like a Western, like where there's not that many people. Anyway, so he thinks she is Laura, and he thinks he has to return her to Twin Peaks, right? Because that's where she belongs.
Yeah.
So believing she is Laura, he drives her to Twin Peaks. Lengthy car scene where
I really did. When they started driving, I was like, what if it's just this? Like, what if the rest of the episode is just this? And It was pretty close. It was pretty close to just that.
Taking place in like almost real time, this driving scene.
I mean, no, it takes many, many hours to get from Odessa, Texas to Twin Peaks. But yes, very long.
And he finds the Palmer house is occupied by different owners. Confused, Cooper asks Carrie what year it is. Carrie hears Sarah calling Laura's name and screams. The house lights go out. So let's pause here. So much to talk about in just this one sequence here, right? First of all, the woman who answers the door is Miss Tremont, right? I think
Tremont.
Tremont. And is played by Mary Reber, who is the woman that actually owns that house.
Yes.
In real life, in our reality.
Yes.
And
are you sure this is reality, Dave? Though
it's a good question. Who is the dreamer, and what is the dream?
Yeah.
It's so it almost feels like what David Lynch is saying is that these characters have traveled out of the universe of the film and into reality. Like it's like one interpretation is that like he's pulled like the reason she's not Laura Palmer is like they're in a different reality. They're in real reality now, right?
Are you saying she should have answered the door and texted and been like, Cheryl Lee?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I get what you're saying.
They're fundamentally in a completely different place now.
Sure.
Is one way of interpreting that.
Right.
But it is. I mean, that woman is. I don't think she's an actress, right? So David Lynch just said, "Hey, let's do this thing." because you live here, and I'm gonna make a statement about the fact that like the person who lives here is the one that answers the door. But what was your take on that scene that played out between Laura and Miss Chalfont, or Tremont, I should say.
Tremont, who said she bought the house from Chalfont, which are like names of that the character in Fire Walk with Me and her grandson, and
Right.
as my friend named them, lodge creepers.
Also, don't you see one of those characters in the original Twin Peaks? Like, isn't that the one with the creamed corn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the like my interpretation of that, like, because you want to be like, she's talking to someone off screen, obviously, like you feel like maybe she's lying or maybe she's not. Maybe like that's like she's married to the grandson. Maybe like there's a whole bunch of like things, but like you really want them to get in that house because she's like the gatekeeper. She's keeping them out of the house. You're like, if they can just get in that house, like maybe reality will be healed and we'll figure something out. You know what I mean? Like that's the thrust of storytelling frustration, right? There's a gatekeeper. It's her, our hero, and our damsel or heroine, however you want to term her, like need to get past the threshold into the house. They can't get in. Whether or not she's actually like a lodge creeper, as my friend called them, or like a real lady who actually did buy the house, and Sarah Palmer has been blinked out of existence, or this is a different universe, or whatever it is. Like that's the elemental frustration, is like you want them in, they can't get in, and I thought that was just remarkably effective. I don't know that there's a convincing answer to who those people are and whether or not they're just people or if they're lodge figures trying to trick Cooper and Laura to keep them away from the house, or whatever it is. Whatever it is, they can't get in. And then the question then becomes, what happens after? The question still remains, like, would they have even been, would it even have been a good thing for them to get in that house? So.
Right. So, yeah, Cooper kind of stumbles into the street and he's like, what year is it?
Yeah.
And then you hear Laura in the wind. And like everywhere I've seen it written about or reported is that is Sarah calling Laura's name. I did not recognize it as Sarah.
It is. And I believe it's Sarah from the first episode, like calling Laura down to breakfast.
I see. From the first episode of the show entire.
Yeah.
And then Laura screams and house lights go out. So,
couple things.
Please.
People in the chat room are all agreeing, and I completely agree with them, that this is like Cheryl Lee's best work that she's done.
Right.
Like as the Carrie character, I think she's really good. And then Cheryl Lee has always been a tremendous screamer. So for it to end on another one of her blood-curdling screams is perfection. And it's terrifying. And then it's just like,
it is
boom,
deeply
lights
unsettling.
out.
Deeply unsettling.
So upsetting. Boom, lights out. And then you get the like whisper scene, but we're never going to hear what she said to Dale Cooper,
right.
In the lodge. And, I think the, you can interpret it a million different ways, but the basic interpretation is that like whatever, the Carrie figures seem to remember some things about Laura, right? Like when Dale says like Sarah Palmer, she's sort of like, maybe I will go with you. I mean, not just because there's a dead body in my house, but also like something about this feels, familiar. But whatever blissful ignorance she had about Laura Palmer's existence, like she has remembered her trauma. And in that sense, my reading of that scene is that Dale Cooper, in his like relentless mission to White Knight, has actually brought this woman back to pain. There's the end of Fire Walk with Me, where like Laura gets kind of like rescued by this angel. And that almost felt like, I mean, I know that we already saw her like scream and turn into fire in the lodge and stuff like that. If that was even Laura, which it probably wasn't, but like it felt like at the end of Fire Walk with Me, there was some kind of like maybe promise of peace, of release from endless molestation and torture by Bob and all this sort of stuff. In death, she found some kind of release. And then Dale, for all his good intentions, dragged her out of that. I mean, not that Carrie was living like her best life. There's a dead guy in her house and she was like a waitress in a shitty diner in Odessa, Texas. But like, she didn't have Laura's memories. And now she has Laura's memories, and those are horrifying. And that, to me, I think is such a fascinating commentary on, we've been thinking of Dale as the force of right and truth, and whatever he's doing is the right thing to do. And we were devastated when he was infected by Bob, because here's our unalloyed hero and he's so important. And then to see like what he did in this episode feels like a mistake, that his need to rescue her superseded her peace, her and
Right.
That was my take on it.
That in trying to disentangle her from this fate that he believed to be negative, he actually made things way, way worse. Right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess we can start reflecting on the series as a whole, right? And I think, I have a lot of problems with how the series played out, but overall, you've made some comments about how when we see things like Fuller House or Arrested Development Season 4 or Wet Hot American Summer 10 years later or whatever, it's often more of the same. It's often, hey, that thing that you used to like, we have the same thing. You can like it again. It's new. It's new and shiny. You can like it again, right?
That gum you like is back in style.
Right. Crystal Pepsi is back, guys. And this is a show that, for all of its faults, definitely did not do anything close to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And not only that, not only did it not give us what we wanted or thought we wanted, but it actively subverted the things that we wanted. Like, we want to see Dale Cooper come back and be good. And he's back as original Dale Cooper for, I don't know, like 30 minutes of screen time, Like, we saw, out of this 18 hours, we saw like good Dale Cooper for 30 minutes or so. And I feel like that's a statement. Like, that's David. Like, I gotta imagine David Lynch knows how beloved Dale Cooper is as a character, and he's saying like, I'm only going to give you a little bit of this, and that he's only giving us a little bit because he's actively trying to subvert that concept, like the idea that we want that. He's saying, I'm going to make you like pay almost for wanting it. And I think that's at the very least extremely interesting and bold, and not something that we usually see. But
certain things felt like specific fuck yous, like which I was fine with. Like, whenever I felt like David Lynch was giving me the finger, I was like, yeah, all right. Like when they're driving forever on the dark highway, I was like, David Lynch is possibly getting a kick out of this. And I was fine with it. The other thing I want to say in regards to that sort of reboot subject that I think I've said before, but just want to reiterate that, like, one thing that really frustrates me about reboots is that trapped in amber feeling. I did talk about this before, because I know, like, the upcoming Will and Grace, they're making a conscious effort to undo what they did in the finale to make sure that their characters are back where they started when we loved them as like singles in New York or whatever. And the Gilmore Girls is similar. And I've said all this before, but what was fascinating to me outside of the Cooper and Diane and Laura subversion was what he did with the town. Like, you've got no one feels like they're exactly where they were, except for maybe Andy and Lucy. But like, you see history repeating with the younger generation. You see history repeating with Shelley. Like, there's this like repetition, but it doesn't feel like, oh, we don't know how to advance our characters, because you have certain characters like Bobby who like have gone through this massive transformation. And so I just really value, it feels like a fuck you to like, a fuck you to nostalgia and a fuck you to really lazy storytelling. And it's just sort of like David Lynch, I really feel like did have something more to say with this. It wasn't just returning to Twin Peaks for returning to Twin Peaks' sake, he had more to say, and he said it very well, I thought.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that storytelling point again, related to the Freddy point from earlier that we put a pin in. But before we get to that, as I think through like the themes of Twin Peaks seasons 1 and 2, I feel like a big theme was that underneath this quaint, idyllic, suburban area, there's this deep moral decay that's extremely troubling, right? And that there's all these layers of people having affairs and people running prostitute rings and all kinds of horribleness that drives people to do awful things. And duality is something that David Lynch is really focused on. David Lynch and Mark Frost really focus on, and the idea that to the outside world you can be one thing, and inside your own home you can be a different thing. And that I feel was touched upon certainly in the original Twin Peaks series. The character of Laura Palmer, who is the homecoming queen, but also like a drug user and who went out and did risky things to herself. That duality is referred to quite a bit in the original Twin Peaks and is brought to life in Fire Walk with Me. But I feel like he really got to explore it in a big way in Twin Peaks: The Return, right? With the triple performance of Kyle MacLachlan as evil Cooper and Dougie, or brain dead Cooper and then regular Cooper. Like the idea of duality and people being different people, and would you be a different person if you were in different circumstances and all this stuff. Like I thought that was explored wonderfully in this season that like was touched upon in the first 2 seasons, but now really comes to full bloom. The other thing, we're talking about the ending, the final scene of the show. And I was really affected by this quote that Matt Zoller shared in his review of the finale at vulture.com. He said, he actually quotes another person, Jesse Clark Tucker, who says, quote, "It's the common interpretational consensus that Eraserhead is about Lynch's rough time in Philadelphia as a struggling new husband and father, even though he's never confirmed this. Springing off that, I've been reading that the Dougie Jones sections of Twin Peaks as perhaps Lynch's commentary on aging. You wake up one day, completely disoriented, surrounded by people you don't really know, walking around the locations of your life in a sustained daze, moved by objects from your past you only half remember, indefinable tokens blazing through the ominous quotidian." End quote. And I did think there's something to that about the idea that like maybe a big theme of Twin Peaks is aging and not recognizing what came before, and that comes to the fore in the final scene of this series where Agent Cooper says, "What year is it?" Mm-hmm. Right? He's stumbling. He has no idea what the heck's going on. And he's like, "What year is it? Where am I? Like, why is everything so unrecognizable and so undefinable? I'm so confused." And then, the last scene is this like primal scream before all the lights go out. Like, is it a commentary on like the terror that people experience before they die? Like they don't recognize anything that's happening, and then the lights go out, and with complete terror and unknown as to what's coming next. I thought that was kind of like between the duality of like who these different Coopers are and like in different worlds, and you like there's a multiverse of different places where you're all the different kinds of you, and the idea of aging, like that's kind of my big takeaways from Twin Peaks, and especially this last scene. And I think you've kind of outlined your takeaways. One of your takeaways being that like by trying to do good, like by trying to be a white knight in a dark universe, you may end up doing more damage than good, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally another valid theme. Anything else you feel like, there's emails we want to talk about and other themes we want to mention, but like anything else you want to mention in terms of this final scene and how troubling it was?
I think it was Todd Vanderhoof over on Vox who drew not an explicit but an implicit parallel to the Leftovers finale, which I also absolutely adored, when he just used the phrase "let the mystery be." Like this idea that we'll never see what Cooper, like, people are like, oh, can we get another season? And I'm like, I wouldn't mind another season of Twin Peaks, honestly. Like Sherilyn Fenn was like, maybe we'll do another season. Like, what does she know? I don't know. But like, there's been no discussion of doing another season as far as like Showtime and Lynch are concerned. But like, maybe they will do another season. And I wouldn't say no, because I feel like Lynch would only do it if he had, and Frost and Lynch would only do it if they had like something really interesting to say. And I would watch it, not because I expect resolution, but because I enjoyed this experience so much. But I don't want another season to like explain to me what it is that Laura said to Cooper in that, image that plays over the credits. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need that resolution. I really fancy the open-endedness of this as I did the open-endedness of the Leftovers finale. I know that like historically there's been massive frustration with endings like that. Like, people hate the Sopranos finale. But I think more damage can be caused by trying to over-explain something, as in, like, I think the Lost finale tried a little. People disagree on this. Some people think the Lost finale is too open-ended. I think it tried to sort of over-explain the mystery, and I think it would have been an even cooler show. And honestly, I think if Lindelof and Cuse were to do it now, they probably would do it more open-ended. But that is just a much more interesting way, I think, to wrap up a mystery show. It's like, sure, explain some things if you want to, like have a kid in a gardening glove beat the shit out of Bob and he's gone, but like leave some other stuff weird and open so that we can like then debate it and all walk away with our own like cherished interpretation of it. And I think that's just more sophisticated storytelling. I really like it.
Yeah. So speaking of sophisticated storytelling, and I think that's a great thing to mention is like, what do we want there to be more Twin Peaks? I'm fine with it ending right here. I think I am glad this exists. I'm glad we did this. But I also am not like, at the end of that, I'm not like, oh my gosh, what happens next? That's not my feeling at all.
Right.
Like,
I have one exception to that kind of, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about Alan Sepinwall's review of Twin Peaks, and he did a good like kind of summary with Keith Phipps, and he I don't want to mischaracterize what his thoughts were. It seems like he thought certain parts of it were really great, but that there were other parts that were just genuinely baffling and not good. So I'm going to quote here from this piece that he co-wrote with Keith Phipps at uprocks.com. Quote, I have compiled a list of stories that I either wanted more closure on or was left wondering why they were in the return in the first place, other than Lynch's need to fill all those extra hours he leveraged Showtime into giving him. Not a complete list, but it's what I've got so far. And then he has all these questions. Where is Audrey and what's happening to her? What is in the house with Sarah Palmer, and what is the entity hiding behind her face? Is Steve dead or alive? What happened to Becky, to Donna's kid sister? Who is responsible for the glass box in New York City? What is the relationship of the monster that came out of it to Bad Coop, the Black Lodge, Judy, etc.? Beverly and her husband. Why? Who are all the Roadhouse randos, and who are they talking about? Who sent the accountant to kill Hutch and Chantal? Was it Bad Coop wrapping up his earthly business? Whither James and Renee? What happened to the girl who swallowed the frog bug in episode 8? Is she connected in any way to the Palmers or any other character? And what other furniture did Lucy and Andy buy for their study, and what did Wally Brando think of it? And here he writes something that I thought was really interesting. To continue, he writes, that list is a mixture of things I genuinely care about, particularly Audrey and things that left me particularly Audrey and things that left me wondering why Lynch and Frost bothered with them at all. But this all gets back to the argument you and I have been having all summer. There was obvious and abundant brilliance here, but it was padded out with non-characters, narrative dead ends, and other indulgences that only served to distract from the things that Lynch, Frost, and company were doing so well. Consider Richard Horne. Here's a character introduced in one of those Roadhouse rando vignettes, one of the few that wound up with any bearing on the plot, in fact, with no real explanation of his identity or relationship to other characters beyond his name appearing in the cast credits, who wasn't tied in story to the rest of the Horne family until many episodes later, and whose full origin story was explained in a single line of dialogue after his death. That's bad storytelling, plain and simple, and there was enough of that kind of thing scattered throughout the return to fill half the rooms at the Great Northern. End quote.
I so often agree with Alan, and I so disagree with this.
Well, let me just say one thing before I hear your rebuttal to this. Is that one thing that's I think is really challenging to do with Twin Peaks, The Return, and with any of David Lynch's work, honestly, is when is something bad storytelling, right? Like can something be bad storytelling? And I asked this because we talked about Freddy earlier. A big part of me wants to say that Freddy stuff is bad storytelling. You introduce this character with almost no context, 4 episodes from the end. He has this big moment where he's supposed to take down the evil thing in a manner that, like, the rules are very poorly established. Like, okay, you can punch this thing to death, apparently, if your punch is strong enough. And then, like, we never hear from Freddy again for the rest of the series, like, after that episode, or after that moment, I should say. And a big part of me says, that is bad storytelling. And I don't like it. And but it's hard to call out David Lynch. He's like, oh, well, he wanted to subvert the idea of, like, conventional hero's journey storytelling. And it's like, okay, well, I don't really have a rebuttal to that. I just want to say one other thing before I turn it over to you, which is that
of course
I brought this up, and Russ Fisher, who is a big Lynch fan, he works at moviepilot.com.
Love Russ.
And he said something that I thought was kind of interesting in response. Like, I tweeted out the Seppenwall article, and he said something in response that I thought was kind of interesting. To me, all those digressions and narrative dead ends are as valuable as set dressing and tone. The idea is that, like, you have all these, like, loose ends, and that serves a storytelling function, right? Even if it doesn't tie up in a way that you think is interesting or satisfying. Right?
Maybe I fell somewhere in the middle between what Russ says and what Alan says, which is, like, I don't know that it serves a storytelling function. It feels like it just creates tone and atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And, like, that is what I think. I think I said a couple episodes ago, and I was like, oh, I'm done trying to figure out what's happening in the Roadhouse, because I don't think it's going to matter. And it didn't matter. But it did, like, when you see Charlene Yee crawl across the floor and then scream, that's a tonal effect.
Yeah.
That is creating tone and balancing something else we saw in the episode. When you see someone sweep the floor forever long to green onions, that is balancing something else we saw. That is balancing another episode that goes too fast to be believed, And so, Alan is certainly so brilliant and very welcome to interpret anything however he wants to interpret it, but I disagree with the characterization of David Lynch as, like, at all indulgent or needing to pad out some hours that Showtime get. Like, that seems like completely not something that David Lynch would be interested in. I think David Lynch would deliver exactly however many hours of television that, he desired to have, and so it's just sort of like, if Showtime said you can have 18 hours and he only came up with 10, like, Showtime would then, David Nevins would have to then come out and say, like, never mind, it's JK, it's 10, because that's what David decided he wanted to do. You know what I mean? So, like, it makes no sense to me that he would pad it out. I do have one exception to this, and I alluded to this, like, in our last time we talked. I am frustrated by the Audrey thing, not because, like, I necessarily need a huge explanation as to where she is. I just felt like that character was done dirty a bit by this reboot. And my objection on the other end is all the Steven stuff. Like, I could just done out any of the Steven stuff. You can just throw my own words back at me and be like, oh, it created tone and mood. But, like,
tone and mood, and also this idea that, like, the sins of the mother passed down to the daughter, right? Like, that history, but, like, repeats itself, and
that's fine. So, like, show Becky in a bad relationship, but, like, don't give me Steven for, like, 10 minutes in the woods or however long that felt, and
right.
Like, give all, like, or his bad job interview or all, like, give all of that screen time to Audrey and give me something else with her, because she, like, it almost felt to me, and so then this is me laying something on David Lynch, but it almost feels to me like David Lynch was mad at Sherilyn Fenn. Like, it felt unkind to a character that I think was so important to the creation of Twin Peaks.
Critical,
so that would be
critical part of Twin Peaks, the original series, right?
Yeah. So that, I mean, so, like, the alarming shock of finding out that she is, like, existing in some sort of purgatory dream, mental hospital, lodge, whatever scenario, whatever it is. Like, I actually don't even need to know what it is. But, like, I almost would have wished we had seen her, because we only saw her, like, the back third or maybe the back quarter. We've been waiting a long time to see Audrey. Every single scene, she was, like, shrill as hell, except for, like, the dancing thing, because she's, like, trapped somewhere and she's trying to, like, get out. So I get that, but I don't know. Once again, that might have been David Lynch giving the finger, subverting expectations, doing all this thing that I just gave him credit for. But with Audrey, for some reason, it just did not sit with me.
Yeah.
So that's my one issue. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what I'm saying is like it's so hard to say like that's just bad storytelling or that's cruel, because maybe the cruelty is part of the point. I do think that with Kyle MacLachlan's character of Dale Cooper, it's we all want to see Dale Cooper again. That's partly like why I would dare say most people tuned into this show because they wanted to see Dale Cooper again, right? And it's one thing to not give us that and then play around with that and say like, oh, maybe over time he's changed. He's a different person. Like look at all these other sides of him. Like I get that. That's okay. Great. Interesting choice. Totally support that. But it's another thing to like have this character be basically trapped in hell for 3 episodes, like you said, be behaving shrill, and then and then just like snaps out of it for literally a second before you never hear from that character again. That's just tough. That is tough to see a character treated that way that is so loved. Like the Cooper stuff, it all makes sense. It all feels like it's part of a broader purpose. But like the Audrey stuff, what ultimately was the purpose of that? Like was
right?
It just,
and when I almost feel that like Shelley and Norma and Nadine and all these other characters that were returning got like a more interesting arc. And not that Audrey's arc isn't interesting, because it is. It's shocking. It's upsetting. It's alarming. It's all this sort of stuff. But it's like, how much of Audrey are we getting through that? And yeah, that's my one sour note in this otherwise like beautiful symphony that I feel like David Lynch created for us.
Yeah, so. Anyway. The point I was making is just like I think it's a challenge to say like what is good storytelling and what is bad storytelling in Twin Peaks.
I hear you, and I think it sort of comes down to like how much do you trust Frost and Lynch to deliver. There's some Lynch stuff that I can't get on board with. Like I think Inland Empire is a hard watch. But like he knows it's a hard watch. But this ride, I feel very rewarded for having gone on it week by week. And I have colleagues too. It's certainly not just Sepinwall who feels this way. Like I have colleagues who are enormously frustrated. Like, I hope this is okay for me to say. She's not listening, so it probably is. But like my editor wanted me to like work with her to like put together a list of like the most obnoxious and frustrating moments of Twin Peaks. And I was like, oh, but I didn't have any. Like I have one character that I would have gotten rid of, and other than that, I don't like. She was pointing out like the sweeping of the floor, all this other stuff, and I was like, I don't feel that way about it. So I can't write that because I don't feel that way about it. And so, but I can understand why some people would for sure. So
yeah.
I don't know why Ashley Judd was in this. I don't know why we even got that character's husband. I could not tell you, but I'm not mad about it. I don't mind it,
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I feel like the Ashley Judd character kind of supports the whole theory that the show's about aging in some way, right? Like that this is a guy who Ben
Horn.
No. Her husband is like a guy.
Oh.
Like he can no longer function as like her husband in any conventional sense of the term, and nor does he show any interest in doing so, and like the relationship seems like completely toxic. And the idea is that like it goes to the idea of like, oh, after a while, people change and become different, and often like things are worse than what you thought they were. I'm being grossly simplistic, but like that's one interpretation of it. Another thing that's as valuable as set dressing. Something else, by the way, that Russ tweeted that I wanted to mention is side plots and digressions were always a part of Twin Peaks, and veering away from them is one of the things that Lynch was dinged for in Fire Walk with Me. So anyway, I just thought it was like an interesting, like damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, right?
Yep.
Where, hey, we're all the side plots in Fire Walk with Me, and then if you don't do them, it's like, dude, if you do them, then people like Dave Chen complain that there's too many side plots that don't have payoffs. So damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And like I want to revisit really quickly that whole Reddit detective thing, because I'm friends with people who like wanted to watch the show this way. And I think there is zero issue or danger in trying to do that unless, as I've seen over and over again with some people, you get mad when it doesn't turn out the way you want to. I'm not talking about my friend in this scenario, but like if you think Twin Peaks is a puzzle to be solved, and then in the end you don't get your answers or it's not a puzzle you can solve, I think it's silly to get mad at the show because the show never promised you that's what it was in the first place.
Right.
So
right. Far from it, I would argue.
Yeah.
If anything, the earlier seasons would set you up for it not to be like that.
Yeah. And I mean that's a whole damn if you do, damn if you don't, right? Because like Lynch never wanted to reveal the murder of Laura Palmer. And the network forced them to like be like, oh, it's Leland Palmer. And that's when like sort of Lynch fucked off the show and the show went downhill because it's like, no, we wanted the mystery to be alive and we wanted that to be like the whole part of the thing. And to force us to solve it at the beginning of season 2 is like, and then a lot of the power goes out of it. And so then so of course Lynch doesn't want to like wrap all your mysteries up for you tidily. He got massively burned when they had to do that before. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Want to read a couple emails to peakstv@gmail.com. Steven writes in from Rochester, New York. Some final thoughts on the finale. Those who wanted a tidy ending could hit the stop button after part 17. Rubber glove kills Bob. Pow. Coop and Diane reunited. Coop goes back in time and saves Laura. Every cheesy television happy ending trope. With everyone gathered at the sheriff's office as Coop tells them, I hope to see you all again. Very Wizard of Oz. I'll miss you most of all, Scarecrow. But the world keeps spinning, and the remainder of the finale was terrifying and enigmatic and bleak and brilliant. It woke us up. The entire season has been about waking us up, forcing us to look at our own degenerating society, our atrophied attention span and capacity for empathy, our addiction to drugs and technology, our own capacity for evil and destruction. We started being asked to look into an empty box, and we ended up being jarred awake from the dream we'd hoped to find there. Thanks for the podcast. It's been a pleasure to hear your thoughts. End quote. I thought that was a lovely summary of declaring kind of what Twin Peaks was about this season. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another thing I want to point out, Vulture wrote up an interesting article, like the best post-finale theories about Twin Peaks. I'm not going to go over all these, but I will read them all. Dale Cooper and Laura Palmer are stuck in an alternate dimension. Sarah Palmer is possessed by Judy. Judy thrives on electricity. It was all Laura Palmer's dream. Richard is the actual dreamer. Right, that Richard dreamed this whole thing, and that's why his name is read at the end. I don't know if you any of those theories resonate with you, Joanna. Do you hear one of those and you're like, oh, that's definitely true, or do you feel
the first three? I don't know about electricity, but the idea that Sarah Palmer is somehow infected with Judy, right, and the idea that Laura and Dale are now stuck in some sort of alternate dimension. Sure. Those sound reasonable to me. The Richard is the dreamer does not at all, but
right.
Who knows?
Okay. Final email, that we're going to read. This one is from Ray McDaniel. This is going to be the last email we read on the podcast, and it's a good one. Ray McDaniel writes in, as for the final 2 episodes, I want to make the case that they align perfectly with both what I guess we could call the metaphysics of Lynch's later work and with an unpopular but I think persuasive argument about Special Agent Dale Cooper. In terms of metaphysics, Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway and Inland Empire all suggest that people exist as multiple versions of themselves distributed across equally multiple realities, some of which are summoned or shut down by extreme feelings or acts, and that above these multiple realities exist beings who can move more or less freely in and through them. These beings are largely unfathomable and have agendas of their own, but one thing we do know is that regular people can't interact with them with any hope of comprehension or control. Which brings us to Dale Cooper, who is beloved because of his moral certainty and his authoritative, decisive willingness to act. I think it's these very characteristics that make him flawed and fantastically dangerous protagonist in the Lynchian world. In the original series, he's warned that entering the Black Lodge with anything less than perfect courage and goodness is a mistake, and he still enters and loses just as predicted. That overconfidence brings dark, Bob-infused Coop into the world and causes lots of harm. And in the finale of The Return, he does it again. Once he's back and Diane is restored, he could call it even and focus, say, on finding or helping Audrey. But no, he overreaches, attempts to break all history and precedent by saving Laura from events that have already transpired, and fails. Dissatisfied with this outcome, he tinkers with uncontrollable metaphysical forces once more, even dragging poor Diane into it again, and ends up in one of those alternatively summoned proxy worlds where his lunatic commitment to saving Laura actually forces a woman he doesn't know at all to bear the psychic weight of the murdered girl, either superimposed on her are drawn from within her simply by virtue of Cooper having placed her in juxtaposition with Laura's life in the Twin Peaks that we know. And we knew something like this might happen because we were with Cooper in the lodge in the first episode when Laura whispered something grim and then was yanked, screaming, away. Now I suspect where she was yanked to was the life and mind of that poor lady from Odessa, Texas. Dale, you try too hard, you believe in yourself and your rightness too much, and you make bad goddamn decisions. Let me know what you thought of these characterizations, I should say. Thanks again for the amazing podcast. End quote. That's from Ray. What do you think, Joanna?
Yeah, I think that's a lovely interpretation, and I think I don't know. I think it ties back into some really interesting things that you were saying earlier about, I don't know, fractured identity, or I don't know. It's interesting about like Dale Cooper and like our affection for Dale Cooper as this like Boy Scout Dudley Do-Right sort of figure that pops up in the original Twin Peaks is like what the return really does, riffing on the whole Bob infection at the end of season 2, is like, this is only one facet of one figure. And like, it's the impossibly good facet, and there can be an impossibly evil facet. And then like, whatever Dougie is, like, you know, that like that it's more interesting to shade them and put dimensionality on them, and you know, and that's something that like was evident from the start with Laura. It's like, who is when Laura Palmer dies, the town is like, you know, she's this golden girl, this golden child, this popular high schooler, but then the town has to like really grapple with who she actually was, which we really get to know in Fire Walk with Me. And you know, so just this idea, you know, and like I really do think that Blue Velvet was an interesting thing to watch after Twin Peaks, because you have this Kyle MacLachlan character who starts out as sort of a Dale Cooper figure, but then like, you know, gets involved with Isabella Rossellini, and then like winds up being like sort of coerced into hitting her at one point, you know, and so it's sort of like, don't ever look for like one single solitary trope from Lynch and Frost and Twin Peaks. Like, please look for all facets of this character, and like there are ways in which there's so many interesting ways in which this is played with throughout the series. Like, I'm pretty sure that the fact that we had Robert Forster as the other Sheriff Truman was because Michael Allen Keane like couldn't come back for some reason, but like to have a different Sheriff Truman is like another part of that, you know, or like to have Sarah Palmer literally remove her face and there's something else underneath that, like all of those things. To discover in the original series that Leland Palmer, this like grief-stricken father, is actually this, you know, demon-possessed murderer. Like all of that stuff is just what Lynch is digging into, and I find it endlessly fascinating and rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is this concept that depending on, like, people inherently have the capacity to be or do anything, right? That you can be good, you can be evil, and maybe it's a function of the place you're in, maybe it's a function of the circumstances you're in, maybe it's a function of decisions you make, decisions you made, decisions that were made for you. That's really interesting. But ultimately, the ending of the show, both season 2 and this season, is an incredibly depressing one. Right? It's that doing good can often result in, or attempting to do good can result in something even more horrible and incomprehensible happening that you couldn't even have imagined. And you know, at least that's my takeaway. Again, we're all just guessing at what like this could mean, but it does feel like a theme is, hey, Dale Cooper tried to do good. He tried to get this woman out of this horrible situation, tried to save her, and in the end, inflicted a horror upon her way worse than we could have possibly imagined in the first place. And that's a incredibly dark message that I think is worth saying. It's worth telling. It's a valid message, but it does leave me very upset, very unsettled at the end, and I do think it's a great work of art as a result.
There was this. Oh, yep. The last Blue Velvet thing that I'll say is that there's this great moment, you know, where Blue Velvet actually ends like on the opposite note, on a very positive, uplifting note, right? And it's there's this whole speech that Laura Dern's character gives about how like she had this dream where the Robins had gone out of the world and the Robins represented like love, and like she says the thing where she's like, there's trouble until the Robins return, and then like at the very end of the movie, like is them sort of like regarding this robin on a branch that's come back. And so it's sort of like goodness is, they've eradicated the evil as represented by like Dennis Hopper and stuff like that, and like goodness is back in the world. And that, that's not at all the satisfying ending, or the quote unquote satisfying ending we get here, but that this art feels more reflective of our time that we find ourselves in. Lynch is not really interested in giving us escapism. He's holding up a mirror of kinds, and it's very, you're right, very troubling, very upsetting, but I find very nourishing art. Yeah.
Well, Joanna, it's been an honor to do this podcast with you. It's been an honor to talk to thousands of people a week, or every couple weeks, I should say, about our thoughts on Twin Peaks. And we're grateful to everyone for supporting us, making this happen. Anything else you want to say before we close out? Because I think that is a good summary of what we thought of this season.
Yeah, no, just thank you to everyone. This is, we already talked about how this is like probably maybe one of the least popular, I don't know, podcast endeavors or like least watched shows or whatever that we talked about, but I've just so enjoyed doing it. Thank you, Dave, for like letting me force you into doing it. I'm so happy that we had this, and that we got to experience with all of you guys who are listening. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it was tough, like catching up on Twin Peaks season 1 and 2 in like a very short period of time in April and May. But it was very refreshing tuning into every episode of Twin Peaks, The Return, and just not knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
And that's just an unfamiliar feeling we have. I mean, sure, when we watch a show like Game of Thrones, yeah, they'll throw surprises at you, but just like, this is on another order of magnitude in terms of the unpredictability. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thanks to all of our Kickstarter backers. Thanks to all of you who listened and supported us. And again, we already told you how you can follow us. And the next thing you'll probably hear us do is the Decoding Westworld podcast at decodingwestworld.com. In the meantime, stay tuned to our Twitter accounts, our work at Vanity Fair and davechen.net. And hopefully we'll catch you guys when we recap another television show.